Since AI and LLMs are conquering the world, many people wonder if AI can now take on the task of generating end-to-end Playwright tests. And the Playwright team released a new project, the Playwright MCP server, that allows to integrate Playwright calls into your favorite LLM. Is this a game changer? Let's find out and generate some Playwright tests with AI. But before we generate some Playwright tests, let me show you what you can do with the Playwright MCP server. Here we have Claude Desktop, which greets me with Stefan returns, and Claude Desktop allows us to integrate custom MCP servers. So when we click here on this little search and tools icon, we can see that we could now integrate with Search, Gmail, but I also set up the Playwright MCP server already. And if you wonder how to do that, the GitHub repository, which I will link in the description below, will have all the instructions. But the key part here is that we have now integrated Playwright into Claude, and with this we have access to a whole bunch of tools, they're called, that we can use to control a browser that is running here on my machine. When we now start having a conversation with Claude, Claude will evaluate if it should use one of the tools that are set up and will run these and work with the response as context. So let's give that a try. We can now start the conversation and tell Claude to please navigate to checklyhq.com. And it now will check what tools are available. And you see here that it decided to use the Playwright MCP provided tool, Browser Navigate. And here on the right side, you see a browser that is running on my machine that was just opened by Claude itself. And that is actually pretty cool. We get here some meta information about the page that we opened, but we could now control Playwright from this little chat window. To understand how this works, let's inspect this tool call for a moment. So when we click here now on Browser Navigate, we see what the request was to this tool provided by the MCP server. So we just passed in the URL that we wanted the browser to navigate to, and then we received a response, which will be added to the context. So it tells us what Playwright code has been run. So in this case, it was a normal page go-to call. Then it provides the page URL, the page title, and here we get the entire accessibility snapshot of this page. So we get all the elements, all the links, and they all will have a little reference so that Claude can later on decide to reuse these references. So this is pretty much the entire context of this website. And the cool thing about this is that usually when you feed page context or raw HTML to your LLM, you cannot execute JavaScript. But we can now go in here and we can say, please click the product button in the top navigation. And now Claude will again evaluate what is there. It will reuse the context. And here we see that it now opened up the navigation that we have on checklyhq.com, which is entirely powered by JavaScript. And we now receive back again another context with the current DOM as it was present after we clicked this little button there in the top nav. So after every Playwright MCP tool call, like this browser click here, we will get context of what the page looks like in form of the page snapshot. And with that, we theoretically have everything we need to hand over the task of generating entire Playwright tests to the LLM. Let's switch to VS Code to see how this works. Here on the left side, we have GitHub Copilot, and we are running in agent mode. And I'm using Claude Sonnet 3.7. just because when I used Sonnet 4, sometimes I got rate limited. So let's use this one instead. And I also set up the Playwright MCP server, which we can access here. So here we have all the tools provided by Playwright MCP. And the only thing that I disabled here is the browser generate Playwright test tool, which I couldn't figure out how to reliably call it all the time. And this tool call pretty much just injects more prompt instructions that I will provide another way. And with that, we're good to go. What instructions though? We're here in a pretty standard Playwright project. I already have a Playwright config defined. And here we have a GitHub directory that includes a copilot-instructions.md. This file will be included in every conversation that I will have with Copilot. And what we see here are instructions that are a little bit modified from what I would get when I would call, or when the LLM would call, this browser generate Playwright test tool. So we have here your Playwright test generator, an expert in TypeScript front-end development, your given scenario, if you're asked to generate a test, use the tools provided. So I will link to a snippet below if you want to play around with this prompt. But overall, I think we're good to go now. Let's define what we want to test. So we want to create a Playwright test that navigates to Checkly HQ, that finds and clicks the documentation in the top navigation. This is a little bit tricky because this documentation link is hidden behind a button click. Then we want to check if we end up in the docs that we want to search for Playwright Test Suite, which is a new feature here at Checkly that we're working on. If you want to use Playwright for monitoring, you should definitely check this one out. Then we want to click the first search result, and then we want to test if we ended up in the right place. What do you think? Will that work? I will now hit enter and speed up the video so that we don't have to wait for all these slow LLM responses. So let's go. All right, so we are navigating to Checkly HQ. Then the LLM found the docs link, which is nice. Then we're searching for Playwright Test Suite, which works great. And we reached the destination. Nice. All right, here we have a possible test case. And now Copilot is running it, and that passed. Oh my God. Let me tell you, I've run this exact example probably 10 times. Sometimes it worked. Sometimes it took a few steps to succeed, but it has never run this good. But let's inspect what we have here. All right. So when we now inspect the files, we have a new Checkly docs spec. This is good, so let's keep it. Let's also make sure if this is actually really working. I'm a little bit skeptical, so let's run npx playwright test once more. So we're expecting here a green test case. All right. So what do we have? We have step 1, navigate to Checkly HQ. This is good. We have here a reasonably good locator. This works because here in our MCP calls, we have access to the accessibility tree. So by default, it's easier for Playwright to choose semantically correct locators, which is actually quite nice. Then we're clicking navigation. Then we're checking if we are in the correct URL. And this isn't good code here because to contain from Playwright isn't an asynchronous assertion. It is a one point in time assertion. So we should probably use to have URL here to wait for a URL. But let's move on. So we have here another get by role, click, then we're searching. Then we're taking the first option. Nice. So this is good. And then we again have here to contain, which probably isn't the best approach. But overall, this is better than what I had previously when I used this code generation. But let's fix this to contain call. Maybe we can also do this via Copilot. So let's say to contain isn't async. Could you use a better assertion? Let's see. All right, so let's see what we have. We got something better. You see the issue? All right, well done. All right, working again. And now we have two URL. I think we can also pass in a regex, but let's see. Now what happens? You have to have URL here and to have URL there. Let's see if it works. Okay, let's run that again. All right, a passing test case. Thank you very much, Copilot. All right. Yeah, I already knew this. Cool, thank you. Let's accept the changes. Here we go. I wouldn't use the regex constructor here, but let's leave it as is. So what do I think about the MCP server and AI code generation? Overall, I think that the Playwright MCP server is pretty nice to play around with, and it's a good step forward to automatic code generation with AI. The fact that the MCP server responds with the page snapshots makes tests more reliable, and we get good locators out of it. You have to be aware though right now that if you're relying on test IDs, these are currently not available in the responses, so you cannot use test IDs for your AI-generated Playwright tests. Maybe that will come, I don't know. And if you're using AI to generate your Playwright tests, you probably agree that sometimes it feels like magic, until it's not. I've played with this now for a week, and honestly, sometimes it's astonishing how good it is, and sometimes it's just pure nonsense. So you really have to know what you're doing, and please make sure to check the output and the generated code. Because LLMs very often, in my experience, try to make these test cases pass, even though what they're testing is probably not what you want to test. So you have to be careful there. And after trying to make this work, it really became clear to me that the correct prompt is essential to success here. So you cannot just go in there and tell, hey, can you do that? Can you do that? And write a Playwright test? That won't work. You really have to try and error your way forward to get the prompt that gives you good results. And probably we as a Playwright community should start sharing good prompts for AI-assisted Playwright code generation. And if you know me, you probably know what's coming now. I'm a big old school code gen fanboy, and I think it's still great. Do you remember this code generation that I fast forwarded in this video? This took 3.5 minutes, and I would have been way quicker just clicking these things together and writing some Playwright code myself. So Playwright Code Gen is still cool, trust me. And with that, we're at the end of this video. If you have any comments, drop them below. I read and answer all the YouTube comments. And if you're using or know about well-working Playwright prompts, send them over. I would love to level up my Playwright prompting game, and I think we're all in this together, just learning how we can use AI in the testing and monitoring space. And that's all I got for you today. I will see you here in the next video about Playwright end-to-end testing, synthetic monitoring, or all things Checkly.